Tonight on Ukraine Today. Nothing special, just a war between two nuclear powers. India and Pakistan exchanged heavy strikes across the border. Meanwhile, Ukraine hits Russia's military factories, including the main developer of rocket artillery systems. 4 ballistic missiles and over 150 drones, the Russians launched a massive attack on peaceful Ukrainian cities. There are casualties. The breakthrough turned out to be a breakdown. The hyped-up Russian T-90 tank failed to meet the occupiers' expectations on the battlefield. Plus political drama in Germany. The country finally has a new chancellor on the second try. All that and more in this episode of Ukraine Today. Hi there, we are from Ukraine. My name is Volodymyr Robchun. Hit that subscribe button, like, and let's get started. Nothing to worry about, just another war between two nuclear states. India launched a massive strike on Pakistan. According to India's Ministry of Defense, it's part of Operation Sindoor, the response to a deadly terror attack in Pahalgam on April 22. Last night, explosions rocked the border area of Kashmir. Pakistan fired back. The defense minister called India's actions cowardly and challenged them to settle it like men on the battlefield. And here's what the US President Donald Trump had to say about the situation, all in 22 seconds.
No, it's a shame. We just heard about it, just as we were walking in the doors of the Oval. Just heard about it. I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of the past. They've been fighting for a long time. You know, they've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries, actually, if you really think about it. No, I just hope it ends very quickly.
Pakistan's defense minister said Islamabad won't escalate if India ends Operation Sindoor. We'll be watching this story closely. Back to Ukraine and some serious hits on Russia's defense industry. In Saransk, a fiber optic plant was struck. That's a critical part of Russia's drone and communication systems. In Tula, the attack hit the Bureau for Instrument Engineering. They make anti-tank system and small arms. In Tolyatti, direct hit on Splav, the top developer of rocket artillery. Grads, Uragans, Smerches are made there. Also hit air bases near Moscow and Kaluga. That's where Russia keeps its bombers, fighters and missiles. Russian military bloggers report that Ukraine used up to 447 drones and missiles for this massive strike. And let's not forget, back on March 11th, Ukraine agreed to a US-proposed 30-day ceasefire with no preconditions. Russia still ignoring it. Just dragging out the war and the talks. But the White House isn't fooled.
Right now, we've got the Ukrainians in a good place. What I mean by a good place, from our perspective, they've agreed that they want to have a comprehensive, when I define comprehensive as sea, air, land infrastructure, a comprehensive ceasefire for a minimum of 30 days, which can be extended. They're willing to do that today. And when I came out of London 2 weeks ago, we sat with what's called the Coalition of the Willing, primarily led by the French, the British, and the Germans, that they want to have this comprehensive ceasefire with a lot of conditions assigned to it. And the Ukrainians agree to it. Now, they don't like them all, but we kind of driven ourselves to a position where I believe, honestly, that this is where we can go. So I think we're close. The one man who can deliver it, I believe, is President Trump, as long as Putin agrees.
And what about Trump's push to make Ukraine hand over territory to Russia? That's modern appeasement, and it only fuels Putin's aggression. That's according to the 46th US President Joe Biden in an interview with the BBC.
Listen to what Putin said when he talked about going from Kyiv into Ukraine and why. He can't stand the fact that the Russian dictatorship that he runs, that the Soviet Union has collapsed. And anybody thinks he's going to stop is just foolish.
So what do you think? Will Putin accept a ceasefire? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe. It takes 1 second and it really motivates us. Now to the night attack. 4 ballistic missiles and over 150 drones. That's what Russia fired at peaceful Ukrainian cities last night and this morning. Kiev was hit twice, missiles, then drones. 2 civilians were killed, a mother and her son. Several more were injured, including children. Heavy strikes also hit Zaporizhia, Donetsk region, Zhytomyr, Kherson and Dnipro regions. In the Sumy region, rescuers were already on site after a missile strike when Russia dropped guided bombs on the same spot. But Ukraine hits back. A new Ukrainian offensive has begun in the Kursk region, and in just a moment, exclusive footage of a destroyed enemy UAV command post. But we have also got troubling news. There are reports Russia may be preparing a landing operation in the Kherson region. Here's our report.
Is Kursk facing a new offensive? The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced a successful strike on the command post of UAV units in the area of the settlement of Tetkinoi in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation. As a result of the strike, up to 20 occupiers were eliminated and their equipment was destroyed. The General Staff notes that the affected site was home to the crews of Russian reconnaissance and strike drones. The work week also began uneasily in the border settlement of Glushkovo in the Kursk region, near Ukraine.
The realities today are such that the Ukrainian Defense Forces, firstly, are located in the Kursk region, and secondly, have struck a crossing over the Sen River, which has been used since last year. The Russians had restored it near the village of Zvanoye. Through this crossing, they were transferring all their logistics, which supplied the troop group, trying to push the Ukrainian Defense Forces out of the Kursk region.
Russians are not only anxious in the Kursk region. In a number of Russian cities, particularly in Moscow, where all sorts of security systems were gathered for the parade, airports suspended operations due to a drone attack. Over the Russian capital, allegedly no fewer than 19 drones were shot down, one of which fell near a multi-story residential building.
Well, first of all, I want to say that the Ukrainian Defense Forces have already congratulated Putin on May 9th with their actions in the Kursk region, preventing the plans from being realized in the Kursk direction. As for the drone attack in various regions, by the way, of the Russian Federation, indeed, it seems quite likely, we can assume this, that maximum efforts of the air defense forces are being deployed to cover Moscow and the Moscow region today.
According to the propaganda agency TASS, temporary restrictions were imposed on the operation of airports in Moscow, Samara, Kaluga, Volgograd, and Saratov. Journalists note that these cities are located hundreds of kilometers apart, in different regions of Russia, indicating the scale of the incident.
How the Russian air defense system operates, let's say, can be seen today in the example of Podolsk near Moscow, where a booster block of the Panzer S-1 missile system landed on the balcony of a local resident.
Later, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that on the night of May 6th, their air defense allegedly destroyed 105 Ukrainian drones. The Russian army is losing too many resources and people, while its effectiveness remains minimal. Therefore, analysts at the Institute for the Study of War believe that Putin may change his approach to further offensive operations in Russia's war against Ukraine.
The day before, the Russians mentioned that there are no longer any regions today, at least in the European part of the Russian Federation, where Ukrainian drones cannot reach. For some reason, they recalled the Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous Okrug, suggesting that it is the only one that remains, untouched by the attention of Ukrainian drones. However, just a few hours later, at the airport of the city of Nadim, the administrative center of the Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous Okrug, the cover plan was announced. As they say, draw your own conclusions. Happy May 9th.
The losses of the Russians, which in terms of manpower are already approaching 1 million, in the war against Ukraine will only continue to increase. Meanwhile, Ukraine is accelerating the production of its own ballistic weapons as much as possible. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Kyiv is also ramping up its own artillery production, particularly the self-propelled artillery systems Bodana, which are planned to be produced at a rate of more than 20 per month by 2025, compared to 6 in 2023. These figures, of course, are not at all favorable to the Kremlin, which is only losing its capabilities in the war against Ukraine.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling you the truth about this war. Click the link down in the description below and become our sponsor. Together to victory. And if you haven't yet, hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Now let's talk about Russian weapons. Yes, they're dangerous, but as this war has shown, often overrated. Take the Russian breakthrough tank, the T-90. Kremlin propaganda call it unstoppable. On the battlefield, a complete letdown. Here's the story.
The Russians praise this tank from all sides. The best in the world, unmatched, and just a breakthrough.
Now we can say that the T-90 breakthrough is the best tank in the world. As soon as it takes position, that's it.
That's it. It's no longer there, not because it's only better as a target, and the Ukrainian defenders proved it. The Russian T-90M breakthrough tanks turned out to be easy targets on the front. And for Russia, this was truly a blow, and not only to their equipment, but also to their reputation.
According to the Oryx website, known for tracking combat equipment losses during our 2014 war, they indicate that Russia has lost at least 177 T-90 tanks of all modifications. This, strangely enough, turned out to be almost a shock for the Russians, as they had high hopes for this tank.
But placing hopes and boasting about the tank is not enough. It also needs to prove itself in battle. But for the Russian Federation, as usual, the image was more important.
The T-90 is one of the most modern developments of the Russian military-industrial complex, and it was given a very loud and formidable name, Breakthrough. But at the same time, it is a modification of the old T-72 tank. And although it is now equipped with a more powerful engine and a new turret with elements from the T-80 tank, it has retained all the shortcomings of Soviet tanks.
For example, like the Soviet regime, Russians are completely unconcerned about their crew. They prioritize the protection of the equipment, and even Putin boasted about this.
Well, one of my commanders told me, unfortunately the tanker died, but the T-90 hit a landmine. Well, because it apparently flew up there. Well, the person just got injured, not from a combat projectile, but simply hit hard there, and that's it. The tank remained operational.
The tanker unfortunately died, but that's a minor detail. But this story is rare, because usually both the crew and the equipment are eliminated. One of the critical problems of the tank is the vulnerability of the ammunition stored inside the hull. A fire resulting from a hit can trigger detonation. The turret is simply blown off.
Wow, it just stumbled on the ground like a lollipop.
In this story, the Russian tank was blown to pieces precisely because of the lack of protection. The fact is, although Russia boasted about the best dynamic protection on the T-90M breakthrough, this tank didn't have it. Instead of dynamic protection, there were bricks.
Look at his protection, bro. Just look. His protection is bricks.
But even if there is protection, it won't save the breakthrough from an experienced attack.
It is hit by both FPV drones and regular guns. And as the maestro once said about German aces, they burn like a charm.
But not only do they burn, they also manage to get tangled in barbed wire, for example. And sometimes Russian soldiers simply abandon their breakthroughs. In such cases, the tanks are completely intact, which means they can serve on the side of good. In short, the T-90M is a breakthrough to nowhere, and now the whole world knows about it. But for Putin and his company, there's another problem. These unparalleled tanks are already running out. The Russian defense industry can't keep up with replenishing the losses. The capacity is only enough to produce about 40 T-90M units per year, while tanks are burning on the front much faster.
Germany has a new chancellor on the second try. Friedrich Merz, leader of the Christian Democrats, finally secured the vote. But the first round failed, and that's a first in modern German history. Local media are calling it irresponsible, especially during the Russian war in Ukraine, the trade war with the US, and global instability. Germany needs a functioning government, fast, they say. And one more thing. Canada is confiscating a Russian cargo plane. And not just any plane, it's an Antonov An-124 Ruslan, made in Ukraine. This aircraft was seized in June 2023 and has been grounded ever since. Now, according to Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Olga Stefanishyna, Ruslan will soon have a new home back in Ukraine. That's it for today. Thank you for staying with us. We read your comments and feel your support. Strength to our defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Like, subscribe, and see you soon.